Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ, is a non-profit, non-partisan, systems-oriented local chapter of the international movement against corruption. Its broad mandate is to fight corruption and related vices through networks of integrity.
So what in essence happened is we produced this report in 2011. We sent it to almost everyone whom we felt needed to have a copy of this report. Mary will will give you a list of the people we sent this to. From 2011 up to 2016, nothing happened. But there have been processes that have happened in the last couple of days, which we feel the public would need to know of. You especially the media would need to be aware of processes that have happened and processes that would happen in the coming few days as we move on. Like I said, this report, we have it, it's a TIZ report. It was commissioned by Transparency International in 2011. I'm sure it was sent to a lot of media houses. We did not see a lot of the stories about this, but there's a lot of excitement from other quarters about this report. That is why we're now bringing it back to you.
We feel this is a very important moment, and from our statement you will understand why we thought this is a critical moment in the life of our work and in the life of Zimbabwe on issues of public accountability in the public service especially. So on the 30th of August 2016, which is tomorrow, a tribunal set up at the instigation of the Judicial Services Commission will sit to hear evidence that will decide on the suitability of Johannes Tomana to remain as the Prosecutor General. The Judicial Services Commission is challenging Tomana's suitability on the basis that he is not fit and proper to hold office as Prosecutor General, citing among other things grounds of his refusal to allow private prosecution in the Munyaradzi Kereke raping a minor case, and denying mobile phone company Telecel the right to privately prosecute businesswoman Jane Mutasa. He was finally arrested by the police on charges of abuse of office as a public officer, or alternatively defeating the cause of justice. 6 years ago, TIZ published a foundational evidence dossier whose analysis noted the controversy surrounding the appointment of Johannes Tomana as Attorney General. It noted that it was mired in acrimony as there was contention over his suitability even then. During his tenure as AG, which began in 2008, he was accused of being partisan in the manner he discharged his duties. TIZ compiled evidence that demonstrated clearly that as Attorney General, Tomana violated and abused the terms of his office to assist certain individuals, some of whom were his acquaintances, to escape criminal liability. The objective of the compilation was to compel the relevant authorities to conduct investigations with a view to determine the suitability of Mr. Tomana to remain in office. The dossier called on the relevant enforcement bodies to prosecute him should it be found that he indeed abused the powers of the office bestowed on him. The dossier went on to highlight that the 4 cases analyzed, that of Beauty Basile, Bright Matonga, Charles Nerera, and Patrick Mavros, were not exhaustive, but were chosen because they were already in the public domain, therefore easy to access. It pointed out that there was plenty anecdotal evidence from police and prosecutors who, for obvious reasons, spoke on guaranteed anonymity. Consulted pointing to the rampant abuse of power by the AG's office on numerous other cases that were not in the public domain. This suggested that further forensic evidence needed to be conducted upon receipt of this dossier. But as the chairman has said, for 6 years there was silence and no acknowledgement of the dossier from all law and justice enforcement institutions. The report had been distributed and nothing came from them. The report was distributed to the Judicial Services Commission, the Law Society of Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, the Portfolio Committee on Justice in Parliament, the Zimbabwe Republic Police, the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, the Attorney General's Office, the Office of the Prime Minister then, because that was during the GNU, and the Office of the President and Cabinet. So it was a great victory. It is a great victory for us today that finally and for the first time the authorities are living up to their statutory and constitutional mandates by pursuing the investigation of a prominent public official such as the former Attorney General, who is now the Prosecutor General, on alleged abuse of office. Whatever the outcome of this tribunal, this is a seminal case that not only vindicates the work of Transparency International Zimbabwe as an anti-corruption watchdog, but also will set precedents that says there are no sacred cows. Even the big fish, with all their political protection, networks and financial resources to circumvent justice, are subject to the rule of law. This is a test case that for once turns a spotlight on the public accountability and integrity required of public officials. It also spotlights the critical call for fairness and even-handedness in discharging justice. Whatever the outcome of this tribunal, TIZ's watchdog mandate is vindicated, and the demand for public accountability and transparency in the delivery of justice is fulfilled. The state is called upon not to end with the Tomana tribunal, but to also investigate with the same transparency and accountability all corruption allegations, especially where they implicate high-profile individuals. Anecdotal evidence suggests that there is need to conduct investigations or further investigations. However, the culture in Zimbabwe has been that law enforcement has been selective in the issues it chooses to investigate. We call on law enforcement to take anecdotal evidence from the media and other legitimate sources seriously. We urge them to investigate corruption involving high-profile individuals and institutions transparently and accountably. The protests and demonstrations erupting in Harare and other parts of the country in the past few months are in part a direct outcry for the end of corruption, especially the kind perpetrated by prominent elite members of society who loot public resources, abuse their office, and circumvent justice with wanton impunity. Thank you.
Transparency International Zimbabwe aims to have a corrupt-free Zimbabwean society anchored on transparency, accountability, and integrity.